flying forth is because of you. Every land that I'm flying to is because of you. Oh, and every happy tear I cry is because of you. You better believe me. Every soul I touch is cause I'm drinking from the well. Now when I walk on the road, I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Deon Abrams, and on the program this evening I have with me my brother Tacuma Ogunseye, and together we'll be talking about current issues in the political, economic, and social landscape of Guyana. Welcome to Walter Rodney Groundings, brother Ogun.
It's always good to be here, you know.
Things have been happening in Guyana across the world. These developments, of course, are important to the people of Guyana. Chief among these, I think, is the fact that there is concern about the cost of living, which continues to affect a significant section of the Guyanese society. And there seems to be no real plan to deal with this thing that is impacting the lives so dreadedly. What are your thoughts in terms of the government's response to people's livelihoods?
No, it is clearly that, the program is not designed to discuss the budget, but it's clearly from the government budget, both the present and previous budgets, that the priority of the government is infrastructure and not really to look to really alleviate the economic and social pressures that ordinary people are experiencing. And this is a growing concern. And it cuts across political loyalties, it cuts across race. It is being felt generally by the working poor and the powerless and the elderly, the people who live basically on pension and people who live on some fixed incomes. I'm a market man basically, so I have a kind of market reflexes. And when you go to the markets today in the city, $100 can't buy nothing.
No.
For the ordinary poor man, let me say 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or you start with $100. Let me say a pensioner. You want to just to begin to think about making a meal. You go in the market, you buy $100 boro, $100 okra, you buy $100 seasoning, you buy $100 tomato, tomatoes, and you begin to be on the road, probably with $500
to
set up your pot. I'm telling you, when you go in the market now, you can't get $100 banana. Every single thing at least started from $200. And this have really this represents a depreciation of people's dollar by 100%. And it is really affecting ordinary people. And I'm concerned with ordinary people, and people who live on incomes. I see the desperation in their face. I spend some time going around the market and watching people. And people go to stall and go, since you hear the price, you got back off. Okay? And this is serious among the poorest section of the population, because there's a thin line between their survival and their starvation. And a lot of people are entrapped, below the starvation line. Even if for a particular day or a particular week, you have enough money to quote-unquote deal with the situation for the next 3 weeks or so, you're in trouble.
Yeah, a guy was telling me the other day, he went to the market, he bought $500 bora and he couldn't feed 2 people. You understand? So that's the reality. Everything, cabbage is 300 and something dollars a pound.
Fruits, everything, even the celery, the gooseberry, the tamarind, nothing start. $100 could buy nothing in our markets.
But if you're dealing with monetary and fiscal policy, you're dealing with a budget. How do you really prioritize your policy towards development? what is the vision of the PPP in terms of they're dealing with the human resource as against physical resources in this
You see,
society?
I think the PPP is very clear. They feel that given the ethnic realities in the country and given the political realities as they see it, they could postpone, okay, the addressing in a significant way the question of poverty, and they could promote these infrastructural programs which give them propaganda value, but more important, it is a way of shifting money to build and to consolidate the ruling class and the class to which their political power really represents. You see, budget is an instrument to shift resources to various sections of a community. And with the oil money and so on, the PP have designed their policy that looks social things were put in the could wait. These gigantic projects which puts money in the hands of the people who is behind the PPP and whose economic interests they represent.
But
So
also
it's
in the
class
hands of the
consolidating.
PPP, we know that
Yeah.
the PPP acolytes get, not apart from the people who are close to them, that they themselves.
Yeah, they get
their-
back money. You know, it's a corruption, but key in it is class formation, because to consolidate their political hold on the country, they have to build a powerful economic class, and that is what they're using the opportunity of the oil money to do. And they could be confident about this, because when they know when they go to the polls, they will not be judged by the Indian support base on the basis of the fact that they have had wrong priorities. What going to kick in, given the racial propaganda, is race. So they don't feel any real political threat, okay, coming from where it matters. Because for them, what matters in electoral terms is the behavior of the Indian community. And to the extent that they feel they're doing enough, okay, to consolidate that base, then for them, they don't put a high priorities on the social things, even though it is important for the ethnic poor. You know, they feel, as whether we like it or not, to be truthful in this country, our politics have demonstrated that the poor don't necessarily engage when it comes to electoral politics on the basis of the class interests. You see? So that is what is driving the PPP policy, you know. And until something happens to make them realize that that policy, you know, could backfire, I think they will continue on the line of march. Because remember, with the kind of money they got, to look good is easy. And if Guyanese's political conception is the old political conception that seems to be satisfied with very little, okay, coming from the leaders, once they feel the ethnic interest is being consolidated, you know, political groups and parties could get away with a lot.
But it's a tragedy.
Yeah, tragedy.
Because from the way you're speaking, this impact of the rising prices is not, it cuts across
Race.
race, you know, and even people who were supposedly part of the middle class, teachers, nurses,
decimated.
they are basically now part of the
poor.
low class, the poor and the poorless. So I read somebody was arguing that we really don't have a middle class in
Guyana anymore.
And that's an indictment for all of the ideas pertaining to race and class in a plural society and in a developing society, that we have erased basically an important section of the society. And I was thinking, I read somewhere recently too, that the PPP no longer sees itself
as a working
opposing-
class party.
as a-
No. The PPP is no longer the traditional working class party,
yeah.
and that's why I'm always amazed with the dishonesty of people like Freddy Kissoon and them inner rights activists who try to pin WP to remain in a political mode
Right.
of 40 years ago, not recognizing the change in realities, and they don't hold the PPP to stick
To the same
same standard. So the PPP have the flexibility to shift. They have a flexibility to find accommodation with the U.S. imperialism. They was the greatest anti-imperialist, anti-America, But once the PPP have him to come to power, the PPP have some right, a legitimate right, to shift its politics to ensure its political survival and relevance. But the WPA have to stick to what we did, in Rodney time in '79, even though the country and the world have changed. So we must be a dinosaur that is not responsive to change, and that is the political dishonesty in the place, So they got a right to change, but the WPA must stick in the old mode.
But what about the response of the people? We seem not to be getting any kind of response from people who are going through this kind of suffering. It's something that we keep beating, but what is it? What is it? I mean, you've talked about COVID. You tried to explain away the reason why there is inaction in defense of the self. People in England now, they're nurses and teachers are on the streets and so on for the same reason. So rising prices and so on. But we seem to be pretty docile and are not moving.
You see, I think it's a twofold problem. It's the kind of leadership you got. We're in this trade union movements and the wider society, what we call civic society. Ghana really got no real civic society in a real sense, but to the extent that you got groups that claim that they're not committed to any particular party and they got some amount of independence, it's not really real in Guyana. And one of the things I think we underestimate what have happened in Guyana over a few decades is that the level of political corruption has been so pervasive that you may be surprised that people who are expected to be able to take principal position in defense of the sector that they represent, in some way or the other, is compromised. You see? And the politicians play upon that compromise. They know you're compromised, they compromise you, and they use that to quietly threaten you. You see? And the working people, with the historical dependency upon leader, rather than leadership. You see, that's the problem. We have an extraordinary dependency on leader. Whereas in them other countries, the evolution of the society, have reached a point where people understand you need leaders, but leadership, that's why they could move a leader without thinking. Because they know that the system doesn't depend on he. It's leadership. He's just one of many. In Guyana, we haven't reached that level. And we put too much of power in politicians and our trade union leaders, that we ought to be exercising. We surrender that to them. And to the extent that we surrender that to them, when they fail to act in our best interests, we are unable also to act. And I think that is basically what explains the thing. People are responding, but they're not responding to the pressures appropriately, and they're not responding to the pressures the way we would probably like them to respond. But they're responding, they're responding. They're concerned, they're hurt, they dislike the rulers, is building up, and they're developing their own perceptions and solution. But we would have liked them to have a demonstration of the frustration, which is important to beat back what is happening. But there is where the masses, are lagging behind in their consciousness. It's not that they understand the situation. They have a clear understanding who is the enemy in terms of their interests. but they don't have the same conviction that they is capable of addressing this matter, even if we quote-unquote political or trade union leaders or civic society leaders are not keen on engaging the regime. You know?
Okay, but you mentioned fallacies being perpetuated by the likes of Freddy Kissoon. Freddy has made the news recently in light of the fact that people are using the word fired, that he has been fired from the Kaieture News. How big a development is that in terms of the political, social landscape and the whole idea of propaganda in the society?
Okay, I want to start this way. It was drawn to my attention by adult peer comrade Ali Majid. You know, he sent out a thing mentioning, you know, Freddy column get dropped from. And I wrote back to him, is this real? You know? I mean, that should give you a sense of how initially I responded to it. But in a more profound way, I don't think Freddy's column being ended in Kaieture News would resulted in Freddy not being able to continue his mischief, because at least clearly, and I'll start with 2000. After the position Freddy claimed, he himself said he said after 2002 elections, his politics changed, his perception of people changed. That people he was close to, he see them as supporting rigged elections, and he see the PPP as a winner and glory, and that he said that is the turning point for him. So, starting from 2002, the election period, election crisis, Freddy has defined or redefined his relationship with the country, relationship with his readers, and relationship with everybody. Now, in so doing, he puts himself in conflict with the interests of Kaieture News. And what you see played out there is Freddy's personal interests as against Glenlad's personal interests. The two couldn't continue to coexist in a relationship where Glenlad clearly want it to be known that he's boss, and this people is me people, and I call the shots here. Okay, Freddy had worked himself in the illusion of believing that he's so important to the Kaieture News that he couldn't see Kaieture News ending his column. You know, you see, and there's the kind of delusional kind of situation he often get himself in. You know, he's so self-conceited and so he's so concerned about self that he loses his objectivity and forget that at the end of the day, Glenlad is the boss and he's working with Glenlad, or he's being permitted to have a column, you know, based upon, you know, the fancies of Mr. Lal. And to the extent that he or anybody make a contribution to Kaieture News, and there's no doubt that people like Adam Harris and a number of people have helped to build Kaieture News. But the bottom line in these private sector organizations is the owner call the shots. And I think, this is my judgment, Freddy is claiming, I mean, I listened to his explanation on the Gildari Freddy Kissoon show a few nights ago. And basically his story is, look, it reached a point where Glenlad has accused him of being in the pay of the PPP, and that Glenlad is coming under pressure from people who said he's allowing Freddy Kissoon to use the paper, you know, to promote PPP agenda. And Glenlad is concerned about that, and he don't want the paper to be used that way. So that is what Freddy claimed to be the crux of the matter. That his closeness to the PPP and the way in which he writes his column in recent times seems to put Glenn Lala and the Kaieture News under some pressure. Now, it is known in this country that the biggest supporters of Kaieture News come from the African Guyanese community. The Indian community doesn't buy newspapers and read newspapers to the extent of the African and the urban people read newspapers. And to the extent that Indians read newspapers, they buy once the government is in power, they buy the Chronicle and they buy Times. Therefore, they're not a big supporter of Kaieture News. And I think that Kaieture News is coming under, the economic realization that at the end of the day, if the paper is to survive, they got to keep its market base. And to the end that if Freddy's activism in the paper seems to be threatening that situation, then as owner and as manager, he and self-interest, he got to take action to protect his self-interest. And I think that is what, to me, is behind the thing. I don't think Glenn Lal is really so upset with Kissoon because Kissoon now has been attacking opposition people, has been attacking our African leadership, and I don't think Glenn Lal is so worried with that, because if that was his main concern, he would have stopped it long before now. But I think what is driving his action now, or the timing of his action, is I think he began to sense that his economic empire could collapse if the people go under. And faced with all of the labels that he has to deal with and so forth, I think he has returned to basic economics. Market, I got to protect my market. Okay, buy my papers. Okay, he got a problem with a lot of the advertisers are Indians and under PP influence, and I think PP probably obviously, could threaten that. But he has to hold on something, So I think I think the self-interest is more than the politics that have ruptured the relationship,
But you claim Freddy is of the view that, he has made Kaieture News. He called a number of names.
Yes.
For the 25 years or so that he was there, that he brought Kaieture News from the brink and really would have put it on a level where it could not have been without him. How fair a comment is that?
Well, I mean, look, I just think Freddy exaggerates, but I think it's true that his column and his activity in the papers, people like Harris, I mean, they are basically, or the people from a journalistic and a paper point of view, that really consolidate and build a paper. But at the end of the day, that couldn't happen if we didn't have the owner with the resources and the money to facilitate it. So yes, he made a major contribution to Starbuck News, and his column, whether they like it or not, people read it, both the friends and the enemies, because it could be at times entertaining, but in recent times, I have noticed, and he himself said that Glenn Lal said that, I think I want to call it wrong year, but probably from some point a year he cited that Glenn Lal tell him that the viewership of his column or the readership of his column is declining consistently. Freddy counter is that which other columnist or column is not suffering from the same thing, or is not even declining more than my column. So I made a point to see that, and I think it is true, because I know a lot of people who read Freddy doesn't read Freddy anymore. They just skip the column and they don't read it. There was a time when a lot of people, even if they disagree with Freddy, they used to read Freddy just for the kicks. But he becomes so offensive that a lot of people don't read them, literally don't read them anymore. But I would say that given the ethnic realities in the country, he will get a large PPP readership in the Indian community and so forth. So he still, and given the political culture of the country and the fact that he had a daily access to important, the most popular newspaper in terms of, its readership and circulation, did put him in a very important and powerful political position, to shape, especially young people who don't have a history of the country and in its politics. Freddy have been very destructive in shaping a lot of young people politics in the country. So yes, I think he's but I don't think he will last that, because he's with the PPP, and they will either get him back in Starbucks in Kaieture News in Guyana Times or Chronicle.
But
I
interestingly, in Freddy's own words, he did a scholarly piece
on the apartheid thing. I mean, I try to ignore that, because I don't know that any writer writing a column like what Freddy writing could be a scholarly. What I mean? And I don't want, because I ain't got no scholarly experience. I try to keep far from the matter. But I think I understand the difference between writing for general public and scholarly work.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. But he claims that what he's doing there. And I think Freddy genuinely believes that what he do in his column is scholarly.
Yeah, but
because, I think he do it because, you see, I really don't want to go here, but to face it. You see, I think Freddy suffer from the fact that he has been, in academic terms, he's an underachiever.
Mm-hmm.
He has potential, but for some reason, he doesn't achieve. And I think he always wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
And for many years, people say he was claiming to be a doctor until somebody's, bossy bag and said he's a doctor. But I sense your friend.
Even with his masters, he ain't got a master's.
Well, but I can't. But I think when I listen to Freddy and the way in which he used the paper to promote his academic thing, rather than writing books and engaging academic articles and so on, that's how you win the academic battle.
Yeah.
But he used a column writing for the general public, to argue that there's academic work. And I think he honestly believes that is his level of perception of his academic work. But it's y'all, the academics, go to UG, and then they got to deal with your
allegations
judgment.
from UG are that he wanted them to you may know lecturers have to do academic work to keep their tenure at the university, and he did nothing, and he wanted the council to accept his newspaper columns as scholarly articles.
The man actually believe we doing a scholarly work.
Right.
So
that was a laughing stock at the university, from my understanding. So when he says he did this scholarly piece on apartheid, it really mocks what scholarly represents.
But I think he honestly believes what he's doing is scholarly. You see, that's the problem. He honestly believes that what he do in the column amongst the scholarly, analysis and so.
Okay.
So
I listened to the former editor of the Kaieture News saying that something is wrong with him.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that when I listened to Freddy on the Galdari show explaining, in a way I felt sorry for him, because I could see Freddy wasn't himself. He was like inside crying that this thing happened to me. This is what it turned out to be. But some interesting contradictions. When Freddy over time, when he wanted to argue, when people become critical of Kaieture News at Glenlal, and say, the paper, going overboard and so, I think he defend the paper and he defend Glenlal. And in the defense of Glenlal, the paper, he invoke what he argues Glenlal humble beginnings, where he started, I think, somewhere in the market, and he throw that out, as to the man's credit. When the man fall out, he called the man a semi-literate.
Okay.
Yeah, he said Glenlal is just semi-literate and basically he's incompetent and all that. So that's your Kissoon. Once his interest coincide with your interest and he getting something from it, he will glorify you. As soon as y'all fall out, you become the demon, and he committed to destroy. Basically, he said basically what he said, he gonna fix Glenn Lally, he gonna expose Glenn Lally, he gonna speak about things that he know about Glenn Lally, which he stay quiet and he begged the country to forgive him for not doing what he's supposed to do when he was a Glenn Lally. So he tried to war upon Glenn Lally. But I want to tell Freddy, sometimes in life, and because we were close, and I got a lot of respect for your wife, and I got a lot of concerns for your daughter because I hold you in my hand as a baby. Sometimes Freddy got to know that he got a lot of skeletons. And if he wants to go after Lal, he got the right to go after Lal, but he got to remember Lal may also throughout open up his skeletons, which could be an embarrassment to his family. You know, so I just want to warn him give a friendly warning that while you want to settle scores, you got to be very careful because Freddy has skeletons in the closet. You know, so while he's hurt for now, I think he better, think twice.
What I find interesting in his reference to his scholarly article is that he made the point that Glenn called him and said, man, he spoke with people who, with whom he normally would consult for advice and so on, and they told him that, well, look, how you could publish this S. I mean, arguing that in Guyana there is no apartheid. You understand? And I found that pretty interesting, that if what Freddy is saying is true, then the PPP, that should be a wake-up call for the PPP. In terms of the evaluation of their treatment of the Africans in Guyana here, that there is a broader spectrum of individuals who are taking this position that their actions are reflective of an apartheid state, you know?
Well, you see, I'm a little cautious there because I really don't know what Glenal means when he said, how you could deny apartheid, because in reading the polemics when the apartheid thing developed, and I want to be careful because I can't remember whether it was in a Kaieture news or it was in Starbuck News. But one of the papers concede that there is apartheid in Guyana, but they argue apartheid differently. That, remember how we had apartheid in the bauxite industry, where you got, in Linden, the Canadians had a community for the real white people there, and things, and there was an argument like that Guyana has areas where it had before apartheid, it still has areas that could be considered apartheid. Okay? It was a clever way of not getting into the current polemics. You see. So I don't know if it's there, if it was in his paper, Kaieture News, or was in Starbuck News. So, but the point I'm trying to make, there's an opinion that you could discuss apartheid in Guyana because it has been in the country before from slavery. It never fundamentally wiped out totally. So yes, there could be a discussion, but the present discussion, as we of African elements are arguing, I don't know whether Glenn Lal and them accept that. So I really can't see.
But did you read Freddy's? He said they published it.
No, I have a chance to see it. I got to look for it and read it. He said it was in Chronicle and in Guyana Times.
Yeah, I must look for it.
I got to look for it to read the academic work. Yeah, but you see, because I'm not academic, I got to be careful. I may not understand them deep things we all do in the university. Me little mind. I mean, may not be able to grasp all them philosophical concepts.
Freddy was writing.
Freddy's
merely throwing out philosophers.
Philosophers is force me to do research.
Throwing out philosophers like they're coming from a pool of, it doesn't mean that it's scholarly work. It takes more profound thinking and analysis for people to determine what's scholarly and what's not. But I mean, the reality is that his day has come. I mean, he's not the first one. I mean, Glenn has shown the penchant for dealing with people whom he believe are not going according to his brain in ways that suggest, well, like you said, I'm the boss. So Adam suffered the same fate, and I mean, Freddie was mentioning a number of people. I don't want to call their names on this program, but he seemed to have suggested that the people who grew Kaieture News to what it is, that they're no longer there, and because of their absence.
And he was the last holding the thing together.
The thing together. So it's gonna fall.
Somebody tell me somewhere. I didn't hear that for myself, but somebody told me somewhere. I don't know if it's the other show that he's doing with critics.
Okay.
That he called for boycott Kaieture News.
Okay.
You know. But anyway, you know, I don't want to lift it to any extraordinary political significance, but it is interesting because what it is showing that the political struggle is not static, you know, and there are social interplays in the society that has to respond to politics and economics. You know.
Anyway, good riddance to bad rubbish anyhow.
Yeah.
So,
nice way to put it.
So we will miss your scholarly thoughts.
No, it's with other people. He guaranteed me that he will be there.
So a lot of people have been expressing concern about the government's approach to the visit of Letita Wright. I heard one commentator saying that they basically try to monopolize her visit and to control whom she met with, and even, you know, created some kind of embarrassment, possibly for her as well as for others who might have been seeking to give her the kind of glory that she desired. What are your thoughts in terms of what people have been saying?
Well, the truth is, I was somewhat amazed at Guyanese response to the PP behavior. I mean, if the PP had behaved different, I would be more surprised. I mean, it is definitely the PP approach to everything in this country, especially since the return to power, with the support of the Americans and that situation. They have got themselves into a position that all that matters is the PPP, and that the opposition ain't mean nothing, and that the social contract that we sign on as a country and the constitutionality and so, it mean nothing. Now, once they took up that position, it means that they're prepared to monopolize everything. And if they're trying to monopolize the parliament, they're trying to monopolize everything, and they bring outstanding Guyanese personality, the guy, you can't expect this PP behavior. So I wasn't surprised by it. I mean, I was very concerned for the young lady who became a prisoner of the nastiness. I mean, at the end of the day, when a government brings in a national or somebody on taxpayers' money, the person, you know, comes to the nation, and out of respect for the person, that person should be able to be welcomed by the entire nation and not monopolized by the government and reduced to a partisan role, which that's what they seek to do with the system. And that was very disgusting and distasteful, but it was consistent with PPP's political culture at the moment. At the moment, you know, they have no respect for the social contract that binds us as a nation. That say, look, we got government, we got opposition, we got civic society. When you spend taxpayers' money, it's not partisan money, it's national money. And when people come to the country as a national guest, they should be allowed to function. You know, they will do what they will honor the obligations and the commitment to the government, but they should be free. And in fact, the government, you know, in a properly run society, when the government is inviting such a guest, you got an independent committee that is non-partisan, with government and opposition and everybody, you know, to plan the thing,
the
itinerary and so on. But that's not him. She becomes the property of the PPP, a prisoner, to be used the way they want. And if you don't like the mayor, you got a thing. It is normal when outstanding personalities or important figures, foreign or nationals, visiting the country, that they get the key to the city. And there's a function, you know, of the mayor and mayor and town council. And every government, you know, try its best to respect those conventions and those norms, but the PPP know. We elect the mayor, we intend to destroy he and the government in the city, and therefore we can do everything with power to make sure that she don't visit he, and if she visit he, she ain't got much time to you know, in the engagement, and we're gonna show he, you know, who's boss. You know, it's that kind of pettiness that's the level that they carry the story. And the poor sister become a victim, you know, because she couldn't anticipate that would be the situation she finds herself in. I don't know the genesis of the visit, who actually initiated and so forth and so forth. But I am sure that she was anxious to come home as a Guyanese, okay, so that she could engage with her fellow citizens, you know, and to be, you know, have the mutual, you know, love, respect, and so on, but not to be treated as a partisan property of the government. But having got it herself, find herself entrapped with that, she just had to ride it out, you know. But it's no fault of her own, but it's the viciousness of the rulers who can't come to recognize that you're running a country and the Guyana is not PPP property and Guyanese funds is not party funds. They have destroyed the line. You see?
Well, it's indeed a tragedy. I mean, you have people waiting at the Ipadaji organized
youths.
Yeah, they must have known that, you know, this thing was planned, and so they injected into their share, just as they would have done with the mayor and so on. An event that would have taken her away from meeting ordinary people. And my understanding it was that people of all ethnicity would have been waiting at that event. So it wasn't an African event as such, and even if it were,
no problem. Should be no problem.
Should not have been a problem. But it's sad, you know, that it may send a wrong message to other people whom they may want to invite to Guyana, because the experience will be certainly talked about and known. But they don't consider, you know, these...
No, you see, their position is we have to engage in politics for the moment. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that this line of march suits the purpose, so be it.
Yeah.
You know, 2 years from now we can find another thing. You know, so that's how they will see it.
I want to look at the continued use of black people to placate and to, at times, be the author of our destruction. We talk about ministers of the government who are put in positions where the PPP know that they will be facing challenges from the African community. And so you have a Minister of Public Infrastructure who will be given instructions to go to New Market Street to break down the stalls of poor African Guyanese. You have, and also the bulldozer operator and these kind of people who would be sent to Moko to basically destroy the homes of people. In Linden, the same thing. You have a Minister of Labour who recently touted in Parliament that what Roy did not do, because Roy, we spoke about his attempt to take away lands from the co-ops when he was in the position of minister, that now you've put a black man there to say, well, look, and he's proud to shout, you know, that we cannot allow them to be in possession of government lands. We're going to take it away and so on. So you have these, the ropes and bends and so on, who are being used as tools to say that, well, look, it's not these things that are being done. You see, it's not the Indian PPP that is doing it. It's your own people who are recognizing that you are in the wrong. And so they are correcting this wrong that you're supposed to. How do we respond to these elements of who are being used in this way? As an African rights activist,
Well,
I'm going to...
You see, the history of oppression have always demonstrated that. The oppressor always use elements from the oppressed to oppress. It is much difficult for Africans to deal with Africans who are oppressing us on the behalf of the PPP. Because it's your brothers, your sisters, your cousins. If PPP use Indians to oppress you in a certain way, given the ethnic reality, it will lead easily to an African response. Whether correctly or incorrectly, but it will generate a response. When you use your own against you, they put you in a hell of a situation. It's the worst forms of oppression. Is to use people to oppress the own. And this becomes...
But that's a tenet of the apartheid state.
Yeah. But this becomes, you know, a real problem. Every part of the world where it is used. And I really don't want to use the program to discuss certain things. But if you watch in Palestine, okay, where the Israelis, if you go to South Africa, where the white apartheid state used to use black police officers and reinforcers and them kind of things against the black community. In a point in time has come where the community has no other alternative but to deal candidly with those people. You know, that is the logic of it, because you can't reason with them out, because they're volunteered and they're committed to the role that they're doing and they're benefiting from it. Therefore, you can't to rope something or to the so-called Bishop Edgel. You can't argue them out of supporting the PPP and PP policies. You know, so there could be no meeting of mind. So they will continue the oppression of African people on the behalf of the PPP until the African people say, you are my oppressor, and this is how we're going to deal with you. You know, it is the inevitable logic of the engagement. So you will never be able to negotiate them away from the PPP, because they're benefiting personally, you know, from the behavior.
Yeah, but I mean, the benefits that they're getting override everything.
Yeah.
So they have no moral, ethical, any kind of responsibility to the nation from which they've come.
No.
That is cast aside.
Same.
So you're saying you can't reason with them,
Yeah, you can't
because their interest now becomes the overarching.
Yeah.
But what about their ability to at least say, man, you're pushing it too far? Do they have that kind of?
No, I don't think so. You see, they know very well that if they do that, they run the risk of losing the position in PPP. The PPP won't tolerate it. Some of them will say, I don't know how true, internally, because I know Roger Luncheon was faced with that kind of criticism. And Roger, like Robeson Ben, you could call them legitimate PPP. Them is people when people from young, from small. Ben here almost was adopted by the Jagons and actually grew up in the Jagon house. So you could put him in a special category. And he could be the category of Luncheon and them things. Well, genuine PPP Africans. And when Luncheon is being faced with the pressure from the African community, that look, you're in this position, this is what you're encouraging. His position was that people shouldn't believe that he don't fight. But he don't fight in public, but he fight inside. But if you were to follow that logic, clearly the inside fighting, it makes sense. Now, and if people like he can make sense, and he could make sense in the Jagon's presence, with Jagon and his wife really appreciate and honor Luncheon. Luncheon was high premium for them, you know. And if he couldn't make sense, he couldn't, you know, force the party into change. You think Edgel and them was just comers will ever risk confronting Jack Dio and Ali in the PPP entrenched leaders in the defense of Africans say you make a mistake? They won't risk it. They won't risk it. You know, it will. An Indian element to the party will more risk more than the African elements. They won't risk it.
But then they got the examples too. I mean, we had the likes of Dr. Henry Jeffrey.
But he's because after he left the party. No,
now he's speaking out.
Yeah, you see,
his attempt to.
Yeah, he also said he fight from inside.
Right.
You know, but he didn't get nowhere.
Yeah,
you know.
But he was told to walk.
Yeah. You either accept.
Or, and then we.
And your dignity, if you got dignity, you can walk.
Ralph Ramkaran himself saying that, well, look, he would never go back to the PPP because once you walk out, you walk in back.
You're in trouble.
The kind of treatment you got. And he mentioned the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, who had tendered his resignation and then, you know, cowered back into and he was the kind of treatment from, he didn't say what the treatment was, but you get a sense that it was really pretty unpleasant, you know. But the fact that he stayed, the former PM stayed, points to the very point that you're making, that they have lost their own
respect
humanity and self-respect.
You know,
you understand?
It's it's a thing. I mean, everybody will say Sam Hines was a decent person. They say he's social and so. But Sam Hines was very clear. Why I ain't giving up this? I the longest serving Prime Minister. I the amount of power and prestige I get here, I ain't giving up. And even when I give up, I'm gonna take a diplomatic work or something they give me. I'm always going to be a beneficiary, here. So that is the main thing. I don't doubt that he might have a whisper in the corners of the PPP that you gotta be careful how you're dealing with this thing. But at the end of the day, he's not gonna fight. He's not gonna fight. I will give all of them the benefit of the doubt that they probably is make whispers. But I know they're going to be all whispers. And I doubt Ejira never even make whispers. Because I have seen the way Jack Dio treat Ejira in public. Dismiss it. I felt sorry for him.
But I mean, the statement that was made by what's his name? I don't even remember the man's name. The Minister of Labour man.
Hamilton, no?
Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton.
It's significant, and we cannot underscore the importance of that, and not be prepared to challenge that statement that he has made. You see, the PPP they have their eyes bent on taking away from Africans, dispossessing them in every way, right? We heard in when the Padaji sponsored that discourse on the condition of the Africans in Guyana, where Council Nigel Hughes did that expose on contracts and all these things. The former Trevor Ben, who was heading the Land and Surveys, talked about hundreds of acres of land in the possession of East Indians who were given those lands by the PPP, who have not used them at all. They have done nothing to them. All right? Possibly he mentioned maybe they're using it as collateral to get monies from the banks to develop other projects there. But they have not touched these lands. Black people are in a group. They are in possession of lands. They're possibly slowly building and extending homes in these areas. It's a problem. You understand? So black people mustn't have anything.
Who own the lands, own the country? I grew up here in that there's part of PPP document in the Indian community, own the lands, own the country.
And like you said, when Rui made the attempt and we pronounced on it, they backed off. But now they're using this element who is proud and bold enough to say that we're not going to stand it, we're going to ensure that, you know, this land, you can't have the government's land in your possession and not do anything with it. Why aren't they going after those hundreds of...
They won't, because their land march is clear. They're clear on Indian domination. I mean, it's unfortunate you have to keep repeating this, but it is true. The PPP have inculcated their politics, racial domination as a factor to guarantee continued political support. And land is critical in it. And remember, land grabbing, has always been a tool, of oppressors, to weaken the people who they want to oppress. Because when you dispossess people of the land, you left them in a situation of floating. Every oppressor comes in, he tries to seize your land and your prime land. So this here is the classical, oppressive march. The more you could deprive an ethnic community of land, then you reduce their capacity for economic empowerment. Because land, you remember, I got a big building, but fire could destroy the building. Fire can't destroy the land. Even earthquake can't destroy the land. It might damage it, but the land is an economic asset that has superiority against a lot of other economic assets, and it is like the basis of wealth creation. You can't build a store without land. You can't do agriculture without land. You can't do nothing without land. So land is key. That is why in multi-ethnic societies and even lands always lead to civil strifes and war.
Yeah, I know.
And the PP is playing a dangerous game in Guyana. Very dangerous game. And the quicker the PP supporters, get an understanding of where the PP is pushing the country and pushing them, it's going to be better for the PPP supporters and better for the country. But you see the ruling class in the Indian community, they know if trouble comes, they're going to jump on the plane and they disappear. And they know that half of the wealth or more of the wealth are outside. So they're in a position where, look, we don't support the PP doing this because PP is benefiting we. It got political danger, but at the end of the day, half of the children will be farmed abroad. 3/4 money abroad. If things get too hot out here, we can jump on the plane and disappear. But the bulk of the African masses and the Indian masses and African masses and American masses, you got to stay and fight it out. So that is the ruthlessness of these class matters, and that is why if the working people of all classes could really become class conscious, they could address these matters very quickly. But unfortunately, in a country like Guyana, race is primary for most people, and class is secondary, and it gives the politician tremendous control in the political equation. And I don't see that shifting in a hurry. I don't see it shifting in a hurry.
But I would say that we cannot allow them to. I mean, they've done enough. They've done enough. They've far exceeded, what is deemed acceptable in terms of what they're doing to a people. I mean, they're basically starving you. They're tying up your wages, not giving you.
They're pauperizing the African community deliberately. They're pauperizing the African community.
They bulldoze your, what you've struggled to build from the ground, and now we're leaving you stunting for survival. And now they're seeking to dispossess you further of whatever little you might have, in order to try to possibly enhance, like you said, land is an asset that you can use at any time. And so they're now going after every facet of life of the African people. And if people continue to argue that this is not apartheid, then I don't know what they are waiting to see.
It's not that the people who argue it's not apartheid, they know better. But it doesn't suit their political interests to argue apartheid. And and in the discussion of apartheid, I have heard a US president, speak about apartheid even in America. In the evolution of the use of words and situations, no two situations is the same. Now, apartheid developed in a certain way in South Africa. It developed in a certain way in Israel. It developed,
in the United States they call it segregation.
Yeah,
But it's
it's the same thing.
Yeah,
understand? So it is not that, I don't think it's not that they understand very well that when we argue apartheid, we're not saying that Guyana apartheid is like what happened in South Africa, but we're saying that the government is committed to separate development and is pursuing a policy, not by accident, a deliberate policy, of promoting Indian development at the expense of African development. And in that sense, it's clearly an apartheid approach. And they understand what we're saying, but it's not in their political interest to concede that at the moment. Because to concede that is to put themselves in problems with the PPP, and they are the beneficiaries with the PPP doing it, so they can't do it. So you can't have a meeting of mind with them people on that. But what we got to do is put a high price for the apartheid policies, and this is what we're not doing. When the African community start to fight back and making it life difficult for the beneficiaries of the apartheid policy, there's when the politics going to change. In South Africa, when you think the white people begin to address their mind that apartheid got to end.
That is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with slavery.
Make it right. Make it not sustainable. The price you got to pay is too high. But at present, we have not demonstrated that we're prepared to put a high price on them for their apartheid behavior. So in a sense, we also are responsible for what's going on right now. We could stop it. Let me tell you something. This could stop very quickly. Could stop very quickly. Look, man. Whether we like it or we like it not, this country is too small in terms of population, and the difference between the Africans and the Indians is so small that if Africans say, look, we have enough of this nonsense, it got to stop, it got to stop. But to the extent that we playing the game in keeping with the rules that the PVP want you to play, it's going to continue long. And that's the problem with the African leadership. Now, if the African leadership had said we are committed to power sharing, we understand elections, but elections can't resolve this problem. Time is going against we, oil money and all kinds of things, and create all kinds of dynamics. We want this problem settled now. And we postpone the social contract that we had signed in the 70s and the 80s. This is a new beginning. And we prepare to throw everything we got at you for a solution. We get a solution. But we leadership still believe that we could play the game of the elections and like we could beat them and then we go in power and then we do something less similar and thing and we drag on this story. So, in a big way, we dragging on this story, you know. And I'm telling you, the PPP is very clear. The PPP, not only in recent, even before now, is very clear that they can't continue business as usual. But they're also clear that to the extent that the Africans are fighting back, we can prolong this thing and we're going to try to get as much out of it as possible.
But how likely is it? I mean, time is basically catching up with us, but how likely is it this idea of elections giving us some kind of solace and possible victory when you have, look, Roy wrote a letter in the newspaper, I don't know if you read it today, but it is alleged that in GCOM itself, a commissioner in the presence of the chairwoman told the councillors who were appointed by the opposition that it doesn't matter what you all say in this commission, that it ain't gonna make a difference. That we have a charge to move ahead with, and that is what we're doing. In the presence of the chairwoman, this I understood, this was said, you know, to the point where one of the opposition commissioners said, man, at least you didn't even have the decency to say it outside the presence of the chairwoman to not make her feel and expose her partisanship here on this council. So they're moving ahead, they're creating new positions in DCOM, they're fortifying all of the likely areas where control of the machinery will be. So how are we looking forward to elections to change?
I mean, the people who believe in the elections got to answer the question. While I recognize the importance of election as an important tool, you know, for political representation, I also know that there are times at historical moments that elections could be counterproductive of fairness and even democracy. And I am convinced that if the African Guyanese believe that they can resolve their problems primarily through elections, they can soon realize, you know, the folly at that position, right? Until you have an electoral constitution that say at the end of the elections, regardless of what votes each side get, both of them will participate in the executive authority of the state, okay, based upon these constitutional arrangements. Elections to me, it matters much. And I am not interested in the elections even if black people could win it. Because when you win these, when you take our elections, you become our oppressor. And we are at a point in the African development where politically we don't want to oppress nobody. We want to free up the energies. We want to take out all them black people from the police and the army and put them into productive things, let them make money, and to strengthen the African economic thing. Let Indians send some of the children to the border and to watch the wealth of the house. African women who they are spending time watching all them properties and so should be home educating the children, you know, they work in the day and help educate the children. You see, the African conditions socially need a radical transformation. And a lot of the old things that we were comfortable with, that we come with the colonial days, we can't hold on to them. We got to look forward with the rapid change in this economy with oil and so we got to play catch up. We got to be smart because economics is going to be the thing. You could have political power and you have no economic power, you got nothing. And we, in a state where we own less than 10% of the economy, we can't get too concerned with defending no border and defending by the property and store and so. Let them bring the children out to the house and to them think you got to try to make money now. And that is where we have to shift African energies into making money to reduce the gap between we and them, you know. So we problem is much more bigger than party.
Yeah.
You see, but the politics and the African condition is still being addressed mainly to party politics, which is inadequate to really deal with the gravity of the African condition. And the quicker as a community we recognize it, it's better for us.
That's an important point, because you talk about our women and our because we heard, I don't know if you saw the video of a young man who was confronted by this.
Yes, I saw the thing.
Right, and he's advertising. Currently, there's a big advertisement for security personnel, and the guy didn't make the point that the people, you're racist, you just cuss out black people,
And you use black people,
and you use the majority of your security personnel. You know?
But that is that's the contempt the oppressor get for the oppressed. You know, I could do anything I use you can use cigar, you depend on me for it out to my hand.
But you had the gun in your hand, man.
Yeah. I understand. You know.
He said the gun in me. I had the gun in my hand.
Anyway.
I ain't want to say anything.
I know. I get the point. Everybody get the point. You know. But that's the reality, you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the self-defense. You could always argue.
You know.
But yes, he was more rational in thinking, man, look, my children, like he said, my children, my mother, my brother, my wife. Man, but sometimes, boy, I tell you, you had a gun in your hand, my friend. Anyway, it's been a pleasure being with you. And
we didn't get to discuss box stuff, but all the time, you time around for us. But box is throw up some interesting contradictions.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you, folks, for being with us this evening. It's been a pleasure being with you again to discuss issues in our public sphere. And we look forward to continuing these discourses. If you have issues that you want to share with us, of course you can call the WPA Center to say what you want, or you can call my number 662-7529 and tell us what is happening in your area so that we can come and see your plight and highlight whatever conditions you are having. 662-7529, and that's my cell phone number so that you can call. Do have a good night. See you next week, same time, same channel, for another program of Walter Rodney Groundings. Good night.